Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be discussing something that has become a topic, especially with the advent of COVID-19. And for those of you who've attended brown bag talks before, these would usually be done in the canteen during lunch while you're having your lunch. And we decided to take these online. And we've now called these your lunchtime takeaways. And so this is going to be a series of talks that are focused around modern development with modern distributed development with VS Code. So over the 2 weeks, every single Thursday, at this time, we'll have a few people from BBD company-wide speaking to us about how they use VS Code to aid in their distributed development. So let's get started. We'll briefly talk about VS Code and some of the things that we feel are important to distinguish. And then we'll talk about LiveShare, which has really changed how we as a team work remotely. We use it for a number of things that we'll touch onto. And of course, this wouldn't be a brown bag without some form of live demo. So straight from Microsoft, Visual Studio Code is a free source code editor, and this is an important thing to note. So it's made by Microsoft for Windows, Linux, and Mac, and you can get features such as debugging, syntax highlighting, code completion, snippets, code refactoring, and it has embedded Git, or it gets shipped with Git in it. Now, for those of you who work in the Microsoft sphere, you'll be familiar with Visual Studio. And this Visual Studio has been around for many, many years. So what is the difference between the two? So I said that Visual Studio Code was a code editor, while Visual Studio is an entire integrated development element. However, the difference with Visual Studio Code is that it makes picking between the two far more complex than just picking between using an editor or an IDE. This is because Visual Studio Code has a very rich community around it that builds tools that helps you do the things that you would ordinarily need Visual Studio for. So one of the big benefits of Visual Studio Code is firstly that it's free and that it's customizable. So it's super, super lightweight, doesn't get shipped with a lot of the unnecessary things that you'll never use, which means that every single developer actually gets to almost build their own IDE. This includes from its ability. If you are focused on web development, you will only take in the features that you know web development. The same for C#, Java, and C++. So over the next few weeks, we'll be showing you how to customize it specifically for all of these different programming languages. So it is mostly used for development. This was the core of its users when it was launched, but it has since grown to support a number of what you would term traditional programming languages and environments. And we feel that it is really becoming one of the main ways in which people are actually developing software. So it's worth getting around with it because a lot of teams are actually basing how they work around the Visual Studio Code and its abilities. So key things about Visual Studio Code: it's free, it's lightweight, it has built-in support for JavaScript, TypeScript, and Node, which are becoming core of a lot of the web interfaces that we're building. It's customizable, and it has a rich ecosystem of extensions as well as runtimes. It's got support that includes intelligence, code navigation, refactoring, and of course will help you with your built-in source code control, which uses Git. So how do you get these extensions and how do you get to start customizing your Visual Studio Code? Well, they've got a store. It's a platform where you can go and get a number of these extensions for you. There are a few paid for ones, I've never needed any of those. And one of the cool things is that when you open up a file, it automatically detects what type of file it is, and then we'll start making suggestions for you on the best add-ons or extensions to add onto your Visual Studio Code. I'd like to talk about distributed development. Now, the pillars of distributed development are communication, transparency, responsibility, and something, because we were thrown into this distributed development work, us in the tech industry less than others, the idea of clear boundaries is something that I believe teams need to be discussing. And something that I personally struggle with is disconnecting. Because now we are working from home, a friend of mine actually asked, are you working from home or are you now just living at work? And unfortunately for me, it was the latter. So being able to disconnect from your work is something that is becoming increasingly difficult. So if you're working in a distributed team, these are things that you constantly need to ensure that you keep and you are working through with your whole team. But it's difficult to do all of these things without the necessary tools. So the tools that you need to ensure that your team has, firstly, scheduling management, and you need clear channels of communication. Now, we at BBD have tools for all of these things already. We can schedule using Outlook, using calendars. We have clear channels of communications from Outlook all the way to Slack, and some people even use WhatsApp, Discord. But the key is to have that clear means of communication. I always like to create between your official means of communication, where you want things to be recorded, where you want things to sort of have some permanent history. And emails are really, really good for that formal means of communication. But what you want to do for your teams is to also have an informal channel of communication, where communication can happen very, very quickly and people don't lose sight of the information that you're trying to share with them. Because of the issue that we've discussed of boundaries, some people are uncomfortable using WhatsApp because that's a personal platform for them. So we need to be open to using tools, more casuals, that work for the team as a whole. Another key thing is having centralized asset storage. So this can be Dropbox, it can be Google Drive. And now here at BBD, we actually have a OneDrive that your team can access with their BBD email accounts. Code, we all have our different repositories. Some of the more newer projects will probably have their code sitting in the cloud somewhere. And the key is to have a simple way of providing feedback. And then the most important one, which is particularly for collaboration, is to have simple collaboration channels. And this is what we'd like to highlight specifically around software development and how VS Code trusts is using something or using a feature called VS Code Live Share. Jason, take us through what LiveShare is.
Cool, thanks. So VS Code Live Share is essentially an extension from Microsoft, which allows real-time code collaboration with a synchronized workspace. And it gives a whole bunch of features for the distributed development that we've been talking about. We'll get into more of those benefits just now, but first let's look at how you get started with VS Code Live Share. So if we move on to the first step where you install the Live Share extension from the store as Lucky showed us. After that, you can sign in using your work account. This is a Microsoft or GitHub account, but obviously since we all have Microsoft accounts, that works best. You then open a folder or a project solution inside Visual Studio Code. That'll allow you to access it and start your collaboration session. So I guess the most important part is to be able to demo all of these cool features. So Lucky, take us away with the collaboration session.
So what you're seeing on my screen is the solution for the Hive. And VS Code Live Share is an extension that you can get simply by clicking on the extension, and you can see it from the store. Real-time collaborative development from the comfort or from the count of your favorite tools. And once you've added it, you will see its icon over here. And it's as simple as clicking Start Collaboration Session. At the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that it's starting it. One of the things that it tries to do is to log you in. So I've signed in this morning, so it's not prompting me to my browser where it would normally have me put in my BBD email address and use my multi-factor authentication. Now, once this has been done, once the session has been started, excuse me, it'll actually copy a link to your clipboard. And all you have to do to get people to collaborate with you is to share this link with them. So I'm feeling a bit brave today. So I'm actually going to post this in the chat. Anyone who already has the extension can join us so that we can see some of the cool features. So Jason joining me now, can see here that he's online, and it's showing me because Jason and I have collaborated before. So inviting Jason. Jason, have you joined in?
Then I'm in the process of joining.
So on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it says that Jason has now joined the collaboration session. So what does this actually mean? This means that Jason can make changes to code that's actually sitting on my machine. Rudolph has also now joined in, and I can now follow what Jason is doing by simply clicking on Jason. If Jason goes to a different page, any other page, Jason.
So open up a new page.
Jason has opened up a new page. Just need to move my controls. Can you type, Jason? So as Jason types, you can see that it shows you exactly who's typing, what they're typing, and where. And again, the key thing is that this is happening on my machine. So Rudolph, please type anything as well on top. I don't think Rudolph can hear me. Oh, there we go. So already you can see that we can have two people collaborating on one file. And this doesn't stop me from writing my own code as well. One of the other interesting things that we can do is that Russell has also joined now. What we can do is we can follow Rudolph on the side, which means that while Jason and I are collaborating on a separate file, we can still see what Rudolph or anyone else is doing in a separate view, keeping us aware of everything that's happening here. And should the person that I'm following navigate to a new page, I have the choice of either to follow them on that page or to simply just let them go. Got quite a few people joining us now. I'm getting anxious. Now, the next feature that I'd like to show you is that under the session detail, one of the things that we can share is our terminal. So currently, you can see that we're sharing two terminals, which is my ZSA terminal over here. I'm going to stop that. And I'm going to open up a new terminal. So this terminal here, I'm going to get rid of these. I want to give read-write permissions to my terminal. Now this is a shared terminal. Now Jason can actually run commands on my terminal. So Jason, please start up the application. And then I've just opened up a new terminal that's only accessible to myself. And what this allows me to do is that I can now start up our server while Jason starts up the application. I don't think
Hopefully
I've had
haven't introduced any errors.
I don't think I've had this many people connect to my live share before. But as you can see, this is real-time collaboration. I'd like to follow. I want to see what everyone else is doing. There's so much activity on this over here. Okay, so on the page that I'm looking at, we have Tabiso, Russell, and Jason all able to type there. So now the Hive has loaded and you can now see it on the screen. It's loading. Go to my quest log. Yeah, you guys are killing my internet. My machine is going insane.
I mean, I guess the other important thing
cool
that you
thing
can
here-
show is that you can kick people off the collaboration session if they're causing problems.
Actually, that's probably important. So I'm kicking people off the collaboration session because I think we've shown that point. Cool. So now I'm trying to kick Russell off and it's refusing to kick Russell off. Cool. So now I only have Jason in my collaboration session. And we can see here that we've actually made changes. So now one of the other things, or one of the cool things, is that if you look at shared servers, because we've started up these two servers on my team, it now gives Jason access to the things that are here actually. So if Jason types localhost 3001 on his machine, he will actually be accessing my localhost, which means that
I think we lost your audio for a second, Lucky.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Cool. So Jay can now access this localhost straight from his machine. So Jason, on the log page, please just find it in my machine and make some changes there.
Cool. Just give me 1 moment to get it. So yeah, the really nice thing is that while Lucky is busy doing this, I can go ahead and do my own thing, making edits, and he can choose to follow me or continue working as though we were both separately creating a solution. So I've added, and I'm able to save the file, which will cause a reload, and then in both of our browsers, navigating to that server, we'll be able to see the changes.
Now, because Jason has direct access by terminal, this means that he can commit and push changes as well. Something else that Visual Studio Code will do for you is it will actually keep track of who made changes where. So even your commit history will actually have that information as to who was actually part of this collaboration, which is really great. So we use this for a number of things. Some of the features that we develop will require very tight collaboration, and we will do that if we need to do some code review or some code refactoring. We also use this tool so we can directly see what's happening here. Now, you also have a chat session here. You can see that people kept arriving and then leaving. So here I can simply chat because I was talking to a colleague and they mentioned that they're very uncomfortable with having to speak while they're collaborating. So they just want to work and then have the ability to chat. So this allows you to do that. You don't have to be on a Zoom call to be collaborating because this is here. So this feature also has an audio feature, which would be difficult for us to showcase because we are on a Zoom call and the audio feedback would be quite difficult. But I think I've covered all of the important features. Next thing that we would like to share with you is to see how debugging would work within this Visual Studio Code. Except all the other speakers that will be speaking about setting up this and using it with a favorite programming language will go into details as to how you can do debugging with Visual Studio Code. So when that happens, they'll also be using LiveShare to showcase that to you. Jason, did I miss anything out?
No, I think you actually managed to get everything. And like you said, it's worth noting that in the following talks in the series, we're going to be focusing a lot on LiveShare and the kind of powerful features it has for all of the different coding languages that we tend to use a lot at BVD. So C++, C#, Java, Python, SQL, We're going to be looking at all of them in the coming few weeks, so obviously keep up to date with our takeaways. But now looking at some of the benefits of LiveShare that we kind of highlighted, let's just summarize them. Real-time editing. So as you saw, as I made changes, you could see it on Lucky's machine. A shared workspace, which means that there was actually no setup required for me to join aside from installing the extension and obviously VS Code. This is great news for someone who's new on the project, or if you're getting someone to look at your code without them actually needing to set up the entire environment. Aside from that, you have your editor enhancements. So these are all of the existing IntelliSense, statement completion, everything that you've come to know and love from VS Code, except you actually get it through the collaboration session. And then finally, as we mentioned, independent control. So both or all collaborators in the session being able to work on their own files, join and collaborate when necessary, work independently when necessary, debug, open, edit all of those files. It's just great being able to do all of that simultaneously. Then we touched on the audio and text chat, which allows for collaboration, meaning that you don't actually have to have something like a Zoom call with screen sharing. Then code review. This is coupled with the next point, learning, which is definitely great for younger devs like myself, being able to learn from people who are more experienced, explain your code, your design decisions, correct any errors, that kind of thing. And then at the same time, being able to demonstrate techniques, patterns, and methodologies. And I guess the final and most important point of code collaboration is that two software engineers are better than one, so solving problems becomes a lot easier.
Definitely. Two software developers are better than one. So we've touched on a number of things, and I can see that there's quite a few messages in the chat. We'll take questions that you have now, and we'll try and answer them as quickly as we can. So I see that we're still under our 30-minute benchmark. So are there any questions in the question section? Struggling to find it now.
So there was one Q&A there that said, can I rejoin LiveShare using the same link after you terminated my session? I'm not actually sure about that one, but you're welcome to try and we'll let you know what happens.
So my session is still on. You can try to rejoin. I've never had to kick anyone off a LiveShare session. And so in the next, I see that Apia just joined, but in the next session, we will show you LiveShare from what would have been Jason's perspective, what joining looks like. A number of you would have experienced that today already from clicking on the link that I shared. But yeah, it really, really is well as that. Okay, can you live share across developers who have the Visual Studio IDE and those who have Studio Code installed? That's a very good question. I've never had to do it. I use both the IDE and VS Code for different reasons. Rudolph has tried it and he says, yes, you can. I don't see why not, because so you can, because all you're doing from your Visual Studio Code is accessing someone else's machine, right? So it's a gateway into someone else's environment. That's why you don't need to have all the dependencies. You don't have to check out the code on your machine. You don't have to do any of that. It's simply a gateway into someone else's machine.
And Rudolph mentioned that you can even join through your browser without having VS Code installed, which is actually really cool. So for an almost zero setup collaboration.
You can go directly through your browser, which is revolutionary. So what URL collaborators use to test the web app? Jason?
Yeah, so the web app starts for the Hive, it's localhost 3000. And what happens is you essentially can navigate to that same server through VS Code by going to that server and just clicking on it. And it opens up the same URL in your browser accessing the server as though it was on Lucky's machine.
But the trick here is that when Jason actually typed in localhost 3000 on his, what it did was it was accessing my local host. So VS Code created a gateway for him to actually get to access the data on my machine, as opposed to him using his local VS Code. Um, can we do the same for Visual Studio? Yes, we can. And I think I just dismissed. Okay, answered that. Jason, do you have a question?
Let's have a look. On the point of code reviews, how much benefits are you finding from VS Code LiveShare versus traditional methods? I think that, if you want to go ahead, Lucky.
So we haven't used it to replace our standard pull request review method, except when there are critical things that require explanation. So when I'm reviewing someone's code and I need to understand the context that they were working in, when I'm in the office, I would simply just turn around and look at this computer. But now they're editing in completely different locations, I'm unable to simply do that. So that's what VS Code LiveShare allows me to do. So that works much better for us. So we use it in conjunction with our traditional methods of code review, but this is a much more direct way of saying, oh, you can actually change this and make it look like, and show very practical examples. What it does do that it limits the back and forth element which you often have with our traditions of code reviewing. Leave a comment and someone go back and read it and then come back and comment to you. This we discuss, we address better almost immediately. Cool.
So then we have another question here that says, will I be able to debug if the code has been changed by someone but it's not complete? So if Lucky and I were both changing code at the same time, it depends on the kind of server that you're running. Ours reloads live, which means that as you save changes, it's going to reload and it might affect your debugging. But obviously this is specific to the project that you're working on and the setup you have, which is why through the next set of our TechAways, we're going to be taking you through language-specific setup that's suitable for collaborative development using VS Code and VS Code LiveShare.
So in order to debug, you need to have saved your changes. So if you're making changes and you're debugging, then that's not the file that you're actually debugging because it's not saved yet. So Jason has the ability to save on my machine. So once we save and then we run that debug, the code that's been debugged is the one that's on disk and not the one that you're actively deving on. And Jason would have the ability to save files on my machine.
Then we have another question. How much does this all cost? So that's another
love this question.
That's a great reason about why we're highlighting VS Code. It's free, it's cross-platform, and it supports just about every language that you can think of. So costs nothing.
Completely free. And I'm running on a Mac now. Jason is on a Windows machine. And as Rudolph mentioned, you can also do this through a browser. So all of this is coming at absolutely zero cost. And then there's a question. I'm wondering how other extensions that all LiveShare members don't share impacts this experience. Most devs have a lot of extensions that they like and others have. Maybe you already mentioned it and I missed it. So this is a good one. And I keep mentioning this a lot, that when we are live sharing, we are actually all going onto the machine of the person who starts this session. So everything that you saw on my VS Code is stuff on my machine. So if I have IntelliSense, or if I have some code helpers that I've installed on VS Code, anyone who's joining in on my session will be able to access those because it's all stuff that's running on my machine. So if Jason had a very specific extension that he wanted to be used in my collaborative session, I would have to install that myself. Now, this makes sense when you think of live shares a bit to give you this even over the, because then you don't need to have installed anything. So it's literally running everything, including my extensions, but everything that is on my machine. And that's why once in the session, if Jason is typing in the console, it's all that's on my machine. So any changes that we're making, it's the machine of the person who started the collaborative session.
Yeah, and just to give some additional context there, for our team, that when we work on the Hive, we tend to have most of the same extensions installed, because we find that what benefits one person tends to benefit everyone. But definitely, if I had something very specific that I liked and Lucky didn't, then I would have to try and convince him to install it or not be able to use it.
So an extension that I have is Visual Studio's key maps. So I like Visual Studio shortcuts. So there's an extension to bring those key maps into VS Code, and that's something that I have. So when Jason joins my session, he now has access to those. But yeah, as a team thing, it's probably a good idea to try and streamline, especially in code formatters, because then that ensures that you don't commit unintended changes. Because sometimes some people have code formatters that act as soon as you save. And when you start a new project, those will change a lot of files that you actually didn't intend. So when we're working on a new project, which we actually do quite a lot, we then decide on things like the code formatter, whether we're using Prima or whatever it is, and we all decide on one that works for the team, and that's probably the best way to go about it. Yeah,
and that leads really nicely into next week's presentation on our takeaway for web development with VS Code and VS Code Live Share. We'll be discussing a bit more in depth about the importance of setting up your formatting and linting settings, how to do it, how to debug. So if you're interested in that, then we'll be sending out the invitation soon, and don't forget to sign up.
Yeah. Then there's one question. It was the first question, and we've left it for last. It is, why does the takeaways have so much food images on the mails? To remind you that this should be done during lunch. No, I'm kidding. It was just the idea of brown bag talks is that this happens over. We wanted to keep that theme and that feeling that we sort of got in the canteen, where this is very lo-fi, very informal, and very casual. And I think by adding those images, we were trying to accentuate that idea even further. I hope we've shared something new and fun, something interesting with you, and we look forward to talking about VS Code with JavaScript and the web, because there's a lot of cool things that you can do there. So again, over the next few weeks, we'll have people from across the business that use VS Code for things like C++, C#, even SQL specifically. And they'll be sharing their wisdom with us. Because I know that for me personally, when I need to do anything C#, I go for Visual Studio, and setting up my VS Code for that is something that I look forward to learning about. Yeah, I think that's it for us. Thank you very much, Jason.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Hope you really enjoyed it.
Cool. Cheers.